All right, this is my class reflection for Pub Paul 146 Leadership Development and Organizations. I think I'll just preface this by saying, this is definitely a new experience, a little weird. I've never made a video of myself talking to a computer before, and I'm pretty sure my roommates are laughing at me on the other side of the door. Um, but but yeah, so I think also, before I get into my um, sort of thoughts on the class overall and more specific parts of it, I think I'll just preface it by saying that I think, frankly, all of us will benefit the most if I give you what I think is a truly accurate assessment of the class, which hits on both the strengths of the class and things that I really found helpful, and also on things that I think could be improved, because ultimately, I think that benefits you all as instructors and benefits future participants in the class. So I think first I will start with um, just the actual structure of the class in terms of being a once a week 2.5 hour class. I think this certainly had advantages, especially when relating to having guest speakers, and when we brought different panel members in and whatnot. I think it was helpful for them in that part of the class to be able to have an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes, considering that they were taking time out of their day. So I think on that note, it was helpful. I think where it was a drawback at times was in terms of class discussion, just because 2.5 hours, at the end of the day, most of us had classes before that. I think our class discussion dropped off a decent amount, by the end of those periods, just because I think people were tired and ready to call it a day. All right, moving on to the guest speakers. I think I'm just going to talk through a couple of the ones that were memorable or that I enjoyed. I really liked Dean Sue. I thought she had a very good presence in the classroom and definitely commanded the attention of the class effectively. And overall, I think it was a very interesting experience for us. Especially because there are so many different times where as students, we play armchair quarterback on the administration and decisions that it makes, or different administrators specifically. I thought it was very helpful to actually think about it from, consciously think about it from an administrative standpoint in terms of the Karen Owen case study that we did. So I thought that was helpful. I think I think we could have made that class into two different ones. I think the exercise of viewing things through the lens of the Duke students, I think it was a little bit confusing, or allowed didn't allow for us to speak as freely when we had strangers in our groups who might not have totally understood what the Karen Owen thing was, or the way that the administration presumably talks about, okay, X, Y, or Z event happened. How are we going to deal with this from a public relations standpoint? And being able to have a private discussion, about that, I think is, or mimic what would be a private discussion about that, is more difficult when you have, out people from, outside the school who, at times admittedly have, preconceived notions about the school, some of them warranted, maybe others not as much so. So I think that both of those ideas in combination were, had the makings of very productive classes, and informative classes, but that you know, the idea of us, working with students from other schools, wasn't the best fit for that particular exercise that we were engaging in. Moving on to Kelly Crace, I think he was. I actually think he was the best speaker that we had. I don't really think that class was particularly related to leadership or student leadership, directly very much, but I think it was probably the most useful class for me personally in terms of a takeaway, just in terms of how to manage stress in a place like this or in high pressure work environments, um, and just in terms of having a class where you could step back and take a little bit of gain a little bit of perspective on things. And so I really enjoyed him. And while he doesn't have the you know force of personality, I guess, that someone like Dean Su has, I think that he too did an excellent job of commanding the room, um, simply through his lecture material being really engaging, um, and B, he just struck me as a very personable guy and someone that I almost felt guilty tuning out, irregardless of whether or not I was interested in the material or not. Okay, moving on to the last speaker that I thought was notable. Larry Minetto, obviously a pretty controversial figure. I definitely think he handled the tailgate situation wrong and not appropriately. I think what happened was obviously inappropriate and a call to have a serious discussion about what led to that event, or that potentially extremely dangerous situation, and what to do about it going forwards. But I think the decision to just cancel tailgate, right away, or with in discussions with President Broadhead, I guess sort of clearly agreed to that, was not the best idea because it just got us more news coverage for something negative when we really didn't need it, versus and also the people who were punished by that were the students who enjoy the event as maybe being a little outsized or excessive at times, but generally go and have a good time and go to the football game afterwards if they want to, or if they would anyways, and don't go to the football game afterwards if they wouldn't have gone, even if tailgate just regardless just weren't going to go to the football game, period, because they don't put a competitive product on the field. So I think also inherent in the the punishment of the students, or the people who really like that event and felt like it was an inclusive event, and really the one time that a lot of the Greek organizations and independent organizations interact with each other. I think the people who really cared about it were the ones who, or who enjoyed the event, were the ones who were punished. And there was very little mention of the fact that security allowed a clearly a 14-year-old boy who clearly didn't look of college age. How was he allowed to walk in? So I think there was an abdication of responsibility there a little bit. And I also think, frankly, that he handled the death of my classmate Drew Everson really poorly, just in terms of the way that he sent out emails that about his condition and things related to that were frankly not information that was relevant to people who wouldn't have to his close friends who would have already known anyways, as a result of peer, being in contact with his family and being with him at the hospital. So I thought that was just another thing that he has struggled with. And I think finally also I think he totally brushed off my question about security with some, and the crime level in Durham and violent crime here, with kind of an abstract reference to, well, I bet if you looked at crime statistics, Durham would be below average. But that's, I think that we don't know that. I haven't done the research. I was just literally just asking for sort of a discussion of it by him. And then, so I think citing quantitative research without actually referring to specific research was unprofessional. And I think also just in terms of, even if perception trumps reality, the reality is, or the perception, reality of perception with Duke students is a lot of people don't feel safe in Durham. And that's something that I think the administration should, address. And I don't think he did a very good job handling that question. Moving on to sort of the structure of the assignments, I think group partner projects, while not always the easiest to manage in terms of dividing the workload, and especially because all of us have so many other commitments and our own interests and pursuits that pull us in different directions. It's tough to manage working together on stuff. But I think I think that's a really helpful thing for us in terms of um, when we leave the undergraduate academic realm and enter into the professional workforce. Everything that you do is group oriented in some way, so I thought that was really helpful. um, I think one of the things that I know the theme of the course was student leadership, and I think that was kind of a change from originally how the course was set up, with I think it being a service leadership course originally, because I remember having to write a prompt about my service experience to gain entry to the course. And I understand that, and respect um, the decision to kind of decide to go in that direction. But I think I'd feel remiss if I didn't say that I felt as if myself and my peers in the class missed out somewhat on an opportunity to study a lot of really interesting leadership cases and theory from corporate leadership, from service leadership, from nonprofit leadership, from political leadership, and that I think making the projects of the class more oriented around student leadership, while exposing us more to theory and cases from I hesitate to say the real world, but the professional world and world beyond academia would have been helpful. And especially for the large portion of us that are seniors, and our student leadership careers are more or less over, or certainly winding down at this point. So I think it would have been interesting to have gotten a little more exposure to some of the things beyond student leadership. um, I think my kind of one final thing that I would say, and again, we'll preface this by saying that I have a lot of respect for Deb, and think that she's she's a great person, and I respect her passion for the topic, and seemingly for the school, and for student leadership in general. But I think she has, and it's a two-sided coin, because it's great that she's so passionate, but I do think honestly that it seemed to me, or that it was, the impression that was conveyed to me was that she has a very, set idea or vision of what she wants Duke to look like, and I don't think that's what verbatim what everyone else wants the school to look like, or thinks is right, or something that where progress needs to be made, or whatnot. And I think at times, because of the fact that she seems to believe pretty strongly in sort of this vision, I think that hurt class discussion at times, to be honest, when she did interject herself, reasonably forcefully on an issue, because I think people, whether it was a grade thing, or just a personal relationship thing, I think it was sometimes others that might be a little bit more reticent to dissent, did not do so, not because of a difference of opinion, but because of that dynamic. And I think it's just one of those things where as she teaches more, I think it will become less of an issue. But I think the biggest thing with a discussion-based liberal arts class like that, I think Professor Helms Pickett, obviously having taught more, I think sort of understood it. And while I think it was clear, you obviously have your own opinions on the different issues facing the campus. I never had the sense, or never felt that you were pushing an idea, even or a belief, sort of even remotely, and that you acted essentially to facilitate discussion, which I think is the most important part, sort of the role of the professor in a small discussion based class like that. So I think that I think that everyone grows more from an honest conversation that provides positive feedback as well as constructive criticism where it's warranted. So I felt like I would be remiss have not mentioned that. But overall, I really enjoyed the class. Thought it was definitely kind of a break from sort of my more analytical, um, more quantitative type stuff that I've done. And so I thought it was definitely an enjoyable class, and I was exposed to a lot of different perspectives and material that I hadn't before. So overall, I'm very happy that I took the class. All right, cool.